There are places in the world where reality feels thin, where the noise of modern life fades and something older begins to breathe beneath the silence. Ancient forests where sunlight never fully reaches the ground, mist-drowned hills crowned with standing stones, lonely moors where the wind whispers names that feel half-remembered rather than heard. These are not just landscapes, they are thresholds, places where humanity once believed the veil between worlds could be crossed by accident. Our ancestors knew that beyond these borders existed another kingdom, not above us in the heavens nor below us in hell, but alongside us, hidden in plain sight. A parallel civilization governed by laws older than morality, older than gods. To survive near these places, people learned caution, reverence, and fear. They avoided speaking certain names. They left offerings. They followed rules they did not fully understand, because breaking them invited consequences far worse than death. These beings were never called fairies with affection. They were called the good neighbors, the gentry, the people of peace, titles not of love but diplomacy. For to name them directly was to acknowledge them, and acknowledgement was an invitation. What we call fairies today were once remembered as something else entirely, an intelligent, ancient race that watched humanity rise, knowing one day we would forget them, and in forgetting, grow careless. This is not a story about magic dust and wings. This is a story about a hidden kingdom that never vanished, only stepped aside, waiting for the world to grow quiet enough to notice it again. There are places in this world where reality feels fragile, where the noise of modern life fades and something older begins to breathe. Ancient forests where the trees lean too close together, their branches locking overhead, swallowing the sky until daylight becomes a permanent dusk. Hills wrapped in silver mist, where stones older than history rise from the earth like the ribs of a buried god. Lonely moors at twilight, where the wind moves through the grass with intention, as if whispering a name you almost remember. In these places, the veil between worlds thins. Not torn, not broken, just stretched. The silence there is not empty. It watches, it listens, and if you linger too long, you begin to feel it. The unmistakable sense that you have crossed an invisible boundary. You are no longer entirely in the human world. For our ancestors, this feeling was not imagination. It was a warning. They believed these lands were shared with another people. Not spirits, not angels, but an ancient civilization that existed alongside humanity, unseen. To survive, you had to follow their rules. You never spoke their true name. You never thanked them openly. And you never forgot whose land you were standing on. Instead, you called them by careful titles. The good neighbors, the gentry, the people of peace. Not out of affection, but out of fear, because to name them directly was to invite their attention. And once noticed, you were never truly safe again. Long before fairies were made small, before wings were painted onto them, before they were softened into bedtime stories, they were something else entirely. They were not born from flowers or dew. They did not flutter. They ruled. In the oldest stories of Ireland, they are remembered not as spirits, but as a fallen race of gods. They were called the Tuatha Dé Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, masters of art, war, and magic. Their knowledge surpassed mortal understanding. Their weapons were not forged, they were awakened. The legends say they did not rise from the land. They descended upon it. A fleet of ships arrived from the northern seas, and when they reached the shores of Ireland, they burned their vessels behind them. There would be no return. For 3 days and 3 nights, a supernatural mist swallowed the island, so thick that the people believed the sky itself had fallen. When the fog lifted, the Tuatha Dé Danann stood upon the land. As conquerors, with them came 4 treasures, artifacts of godlike power, a stone that cried out when a true king touched it, a sword that guaranteed victory once drawn, a spear that thirsted endlessly for blood, and a cauldron that could feed an army forever. These were not tools of nature's spirits. They were the weapons of a ruling pantheon. And for a time, they were unstoppable. Power, no matter how ancient, is never eternal. For generations, the Tuatha Dé Danann ruled Ireland as living gods. Their halls rang with music older than language. Their warriors reshaped fate itself on the battlefield. To the people of the land, they were immortal, untouchable. But destiny was already moving against them. From the western seas came a new people, the Milesians. They were not divine. They carried no legendary artifacts. They wielded no spells carved into stone. What they possessed was far more dangerous. They were human. The war between gods and mortals was swift and merciless. Storms were summoned. Mountains shook. Magic clashed against steel and willpower. And for the first time, the Tuatha Dé Danann began to lose. The land itself seemed to turn against them. Their spells faltered. Their victories became narrow. Their immortality irrelevant. In the final battle, the gods were defeated. Not destroyed, but displaced. The world was changing. The age of myth was giving way to the age of man. And so the Tuatha Dé Danann made a choice that would reshape folklore forever. They would not die. They would withdraw. In a great treaty with the victors, the surface world was surrendered to humanity. In return, the Tuatha Dé Danann claimed something unseen. The world beneath the world. They retreated into the Shia, the hollow hills, burial mounds, and ancient earthen forts. What looked like gentle hills became gateways. What seemed like empty land concealed vast kingdoms. The gods stepped sideways out of reality. And when they emerged again, they were no longer gods. They became the Alshi, the people of the mounds, the beings we would one day fear and call fair folk. The hidden world is not united. To imagine the fair folk as a single people is a fatal mistake. Beneath the hollow hills, their kingdom fractured into two great powers. Two courts whose rivalry is as old as the seasons themselves. Light and darkness, summer and winter, order and chaos. These are not moral divisions. They are elemental truths. The first court walks in twilight and gold. They are known as the Seelie Court. Tall, radiant, and dangerously beautiful. The Seelie are the aristocracy of the fairy realm. They embody nature at its most seductive. The warmth of sunlight through leaves. The promise of growth. The illusion of mercy. They ride in grand processions at dusk, hunting through forests that shimmer with magic. Music follows them. Laughter echoes behind them. But their kindness is conditional. The Seelie do not love humanity. They tolerate it. Their generosity follows strict laws. Break a promise. Offer thanks incorrectly. Show disrespect without knowing it. And their favor turns to punishment. A gift from the Seelie always carries a cost. A blessing can become a curse. Without warning. Yet where there is light, there must be shadow. The second court rules the dark places of the otherworld. They are the Unseelie Court. They are not beautiful. They do not bargain. They do not forgive. The Unseelie embody nature in its most brutal form. The winter storm that kills without intent. The predator that hunts in silence. The sickness that spreads unseen. They delight in fear. Where the Seelie demand respect, the Unseelie demand suffering. They haunt ruins and desolate moors. They ride the night winds. They stalk travelers who wander too far from firelight. To encounter the seelie is dangerous. To encounter the unseelie is often fatal. Together, these courts maintain balance. Not good and evil. Not heroes and monsters. But two halves of a power that does not care whether humanity survives at all. The other world is not chaos. It is governed by laws older than religion, older than kingdoms, older than humanity itself. These are not laws of morality. They do not care if you are good or evil. They are absolute. And breaking them does not bring punishment. It brings consequences. The first law is written in metal. Iron. To the fair folk, cold iron is poison. It burns their flesh. It disrupts their magic. It reminds them of something they despise. Human dominion. Iron is torn from the earth, reshaped by fire, and forced into obedience by mortal hands. It represents industry, control, the taming of nature. That is why a simple horseshoe on a door, a nail in a threshold, or scissors placed near a cradle were once considered powerful protection. Not symbols, weapons. The second law governs hunger. Never eat or drink in the fairy realm. The food of the other world is a trap. Beautiful, perfect, laced with enchantment. One bite binds you to their land. One sip erases the path home. Countless mortals vanish not through force, but through temptation. They ate, and were never seen again. The third law is the most dangerous of all. Never give them your true name. A name is not just a word. It is a key. To speak your true name to a fairy is to give them power over your essence. They can summon you, bind you, break you. That is why the fair folk crave names, and why they hide their own so fiercely. And then there is the law no one can escape. Time. Time does not behave in the other world. A night of music may be a century. A moment of wonder can erase generations. You may return unchanged to a world that has forgotten you. This is not cruelty. It is physics. The fairy realm exists on a different rhythm of reality, and stepping into it means abandoning your own. There are places in the world where reality feels thin, where the noise of modern life fades and something older begins to breathe beneath the silence. Ancient forests where sunlight never fully reaches the ground, mist-drowned hills crowned with standing stones, lonely moors where the wind whispers names that feel half-remembered rather than heard. These are not just landscapes, they are thresholds, places where humanity once believed the veil between worlds could be crossed by accident. Our ancestors knew that beyond these borders existed another kingdom, not above us in the heavens nor below us in hell, but alongside us, hidden in plain sight. A parallel civilization governed by laws older than morality, older than gods. To survive near these places, people learned caution, reverence, and fear. They avoided speaking certain names. They left offerings. They followed rules they did not fully understand, because breaking them invited consequences far worse than death. These beings were never called fairies with affection. They were called the good neighbors, the gentry, the people of peace, titles not of love but diplomacy. For to name them directly was to acknowledge them, and acknowledgement was an invitation. What we call fairies today were once remembered as something else entirely. An intelligent, ancient race that watched humanity rise, knowing one day we would forget them, and in forgetting, grow careless. This is not a story about magic dust and wings. This is a story about a hidden kingdom that never vanished, only stepped aside, waiting for the world to grow quiet enough to notice it again.